If you are someone interested in the topic of end of time, the coming of the Mahdi, Dajjal, consider to subscribe. Now let me tell you this. Russia, we know Medvedev. He was the former president of Russia. Putin is now the president, but Medvedev was the president for I think 4 years or 5 years. He said something that is very, very chilling. Very, very chilling. And because we talk about end of time, and I said in my other videos that Nasara, the Christians, in our time is being led by Russia. The Yahudi, the Jew, are being led by the West. Okay? Both Jew and Nasara, they are going to fight against us. Obviously, there are hadith that talks about the Nasara will have a peace agreement with the Muslims, but that's beside the point, because at the end of the day, they are going to be fighting against us. Chutzpah, remember I mentioned to you about chutzpah? It's a Greek word that basically means a group that is fearful, very, very dangerous, and they are very, very confident about their victory. Wherever they go, they win. So what happened this time? Let me tell you this hadith first, because once you know the hadith, then you will know what I'm talking about, how Russia is using or echoing with end of time hadith. Yeah, they're echoing end of time hadith in their rhetoric against the West. This is very, very interesting. Very, very interesting, in fact. إذا وقعت الملاهم بعث الله بعث من المواليهم أكرم العرب فرسا وأزواده سلاحا يؤيد الله بهم الدين. This is the hadith. What does this mean? When the fierce battles take place, Allah will send a group or a troop of freed slaves who will be the best Arab horsemen and the best armed, with whom Allah will support His religion. Okay? يُؤَيِّدُهُ اللَّهُ بِهِمُ الدِّينِ. Allah will support His religion through the hand of this Arab horsemen. They are the best Arab horsemen, and they are well armed. You understand this hadith? So let's talk about what Russia is saying. One of, and this came in the news only a few hours ago. This is how they are echoing the end of time hadith. One of Vladimir Putin's key allies has warned that the horsemen, quote, horsemen of the apocalypse are on their way, end quote, in the latest chilling Kremlin warning of destruction. Dmitry Medvedev, the former president of Russia, now this is where things get even more interesting. He warned Moscow will attack Western cities if Ukraine uses missiles provided by US. The Kremlin Insider 26 currently serves as a deputy head of Russia's National Security Council and acted as president 2008 to 2012, so 4 years. While Putin was term limited, although he remained under his influence, means under the influence of Putin. He wrote last week, quote, I am often asked why my Telegram posts are so harsh. The answer is I hate them. They are BS and degenerates. Quote, they want death for Russia, and while I'm alive, I will do everything to make them disappear. Subhanallah. This is coming from a guy who is going to be, if something happens to Putin, he is going to be the next president. This is what he's saying. He's talking about end of time horsemen. There are exact hadith, and this hadith, by the way, is Hassan. Abu Huraira reported, Sunan ibn Majah, this hadith can be found, is echoing this exact hadith in his rhetoric, harsh rhetoric against the West, in his warning that as long as I am alive, I am going to make sure that these Western countries are being destroyed. This is what he's saying. I will do everything to make them disappear, end quote. Now, he said, the they Medvedev is referring to is understood to mean Ukraine and its allies. The way Russia is seeing this war right now looks like to me is a war of the end of time. Make no mistake. After this statement, we can feel their sentiment, we can feel them, and we can come to this conclusion that Russia is seeing this war against Ukraine as the end of time war. Putin, he himself said that they are fighting for a noble cause, quote unquote, noble cause. What is noble cause? The noble cause is the end of time malhama. That's what he believes he's doing when he goes against Ukraine. In addition to re-establishing Russian Empire and taking back all the territories that they have lost during the Soviet era, he is also now going to use this kind of rhetoric and echo the end of time prophecies in order to justify his war. Days earlier, he said Moscow would escalate their war on the West if US supplied missiles are used against Russian forces, saying, quote, the horsemen of the apocalypse are already on their way. The horseman that we talked about in the hadith, the horseman that we talked about, the chutzpah before, he is referring to that, and he's saying these horsemen are on their way. Means it already started. They already started their journey. They're already coming to help us. We are going to be having support, divine support. We will have divine support. We will not capitulate, and that it is impossible for a country like Russia, an empire like Russia, to be doomed. And this is exactly what Putin said. He said, Western sanctions against us is ridiculous because Russia cannot fall. Russia cannot fall. It is impossible that the West could sanction Russia to destroy it. Medvedev, who was previously seen as a modernizer and a more liberal figurehead for Russia, has also accused Ukraine of being led by drugged up Nazis. So obviously Medvedev has changed. He is under the influence of Putin, and he now believes the entire country, they want the entire country of Russia to believe that this is a holy war against the bad people. They are using this word Nazi, but in the future, obviously, they are going to replace it with Shaitan. They will say, we are fighting against the Satan. We are fighting against the Antichrist. Join us. This is exactly what they will do. He wrote on Telegram, quote, NATO countries pumping weapons into Ukraine, training troops to use Western equipment, sending in mercenaries, and the exercises of alliance countries near our border increase the likelihood of a direct and open conflict between NATO and Russia. I mean, he is making it absolutely clear Russia is going to fight, and they are in a fighting mode, and they are indirectly threatening NATO, its expansion, its long-term goal. You can, whatever you can think about NATO and its progress, they are threatening all of it. What NATO will do in return, we do not know. Quote, such a conflict has the risk of turning into a full-fledged nuclear war. This is where it gets so dangerous. He is now saying the word that you're saying, and I reported in my other channel where I talk about international politics. He said now that we are heading towards a direction where we will have no other choice but to use nukes against Ukraine for now Ukraine. And I predict they would not hesitate to use it against Baltic nations, Scandinavian countries, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland. They will not hesitate to use nukes against anybody. But right now they're focusing on their borders. His stormy post continued. He said, quote, "The endless talk by foreign analysts about a war between NATO and Russia continues unabated." Basically, he's saying, I do not see an end to this war. Basically, this is what he's saying, that this is going to continue on, and this is the opinion of the experts. This is what he's saying. Then he said, the cynicism of Western, quote, talking heads, end quote, is becoming more and more blatant. They don't like how the West, they're treating Russia. They do not want to be subjected to Western sanctions, Western ideologies. They are refusing to be the follower of the Yahudi. This is exactly what Russia is trying. That Christianity needs to be revived. Remember, there is a hadith that talks about revival of Islam. Every 100 years, there is going to be a revival. Russia believes Christianity is going to be revived by Russia through the hand of Putin. There is no doubt about that. If you read these lines, this is exactly what comes to your mind, that they are going to revive Christianity and they're going to wage war, holy war, noble war, whichever way you put it. And they are not going to capitulate to the Yahudi. They are going to fight and see the end of it until they have their religion established on land. The thesis that Russia frightens the world with a nuclear conflict is being pushed to the top of the agenda. Oh, of course. This is exactly what you're doing. Every single time you come out, make a statement about this war, you use nuclear weapon. You're using that word right now. Even Donald Trump, he said, quote, recently came out with this, though understandably, just to spite President Biden. Okay, yeah, of course. Donald Trump is also talking about, teaching Russia a good lesson if they don't listen to him. I mean, subhanAllah, when he will be in power, if he does come back to the White House, I don't know how he will react, because Donald Trump is someone who doesn't want to be under somebody else's order or somebody else's whims and desires. He is someone who loves to exert his own opinion, his own views on others. He doesn't take it, he will impose it. He's not a taker. He's not somebody, I'm on the recipient and let me be, a follower of this guy, or let me just get along with him for the sake of get along. He is opposing this war, so when Donald Trump will be, if he does come back, it will be interesting to see how he will react. Would US get involved with Russia directly? I mean, under Donald Trump, anything can happen. You never know. Quote, and of course, the Europeans are squeaking their little voices. Subhanallah. He's calling them ducks and chicken. Medvedev is calling European countries, Western countries, like European countries, I should say, as ducks and chickens, because according to him, their voices are nothing but squeaking. He also warned the West, quote, I want to articulate very clearly, once again, the things that are so obvious to all reasonable people. You don't have to lie to yourself and others. So he's same time looks like appealing to the people, the public, and saying, do not be so naive, believing in your government. Quote, you just have to think about the possible consequences of your actions, end quote. Quote, and don't choke on your own saliva in paroxysms of Russophobia. Subhanallah. Former opposition MP Dmitry Gudkov, has claimed Medvedev's rants show he is preparing for a second bid for power when Putin eventually relinquishes his hold. So again, as I said, Medvedev, if something happens to Putin, Medvedev is going to be the president. And according to opposition MP Dmitry Gudkov, he is saying Medvedev, the reason Medvedev is making these statements is because, number one, he wants to be back to power after Putin will relinquish. And number two is he is reaching out to his potential supporters by going against the West. The strong anti-Western rhetoric appeals to hardliners in the Russian military and helps change the narrative that he is seen as too soft. Gudkov said, quote, he's trying to please the hardliners in the hope that they will promote him in the event of Putin leaving office. So this is what his opposition is saying. But of course, we know that the opposition party will never come to power in Russia because it's Putin's country. And he will appoint Medvedev as the next president if he does leave office. Subhanallah, I mean, reading this article, it just gives us so much chills, wallahi, that Russia now thinks that we are at the end of time and that we are bringing the horsemen, they're on their way, and that there is going to be a nuclear war, smoke, dukhan. He's mentioning pretty much everything that we talk about in this channel, wallahi. This is just mind-blowing. So people who support Russia, you should not. You should not. You are Muslim, you should support the Muslims. You cannot afford to support the Nasara. Can you? Well, if you say, yeah, they're better than the Yahudi, well, I mean, really, nobody is better than anybody. They are all followers of Dajjal, man. The Nasara, when the Dajjal will be here, they will believe that he is the Messiah. And then he will say, oh, no, I'm not Messiah, I'm your Lord. They will believe in Dajjal to be their Lord. So don't fool yourself, because they are being already fooled by Allah Azza wa Jal. May Allah protect us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.